The MACC has arrested PN chairman and former Prime Minister Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin and will bring him to court tomorrow to face several charges in relation to the Jana Wibawa program. Muhyiddin arrived at the anti-graft agency's headquarters in Putrajaya this morning to give his statement over the matter and was swarmed by supporters and members of the press. In a statement, the MACC said it arrested the Bersatu president at 1 p.m. and will be taking him to court tomorrow for charges of abuse of power and money laundering. Muhyiddin was first summoned to the MACC in February to record his statements regarding the Jana Wibawa projects introduced during his time as the Prime Minister. Just last month, the Commission froze Bersatu's accounts as part of a probe concerning political donations amounting to over 300 million ringgit from contractors who procured various public projects when the party helmed the government. Later the same month, two individuals linked to Bersatu, Datuk Wan Saiful Wan Jan and Adam Radlan Adam Muhammad, were charged in court with soliciting and accepting bribes of up to millions in ringgit in relation to the program. Both have denied any wrongdoing and pleaded not guilty. Bank Negara Malaysia or BNM maintained the key policy rate at 2.75% as inflation is expected to moderate this year, with lingering upward pressures to be partly contained by Putrajaya's price controls and fuel subsidies. This is the second consecutive time the central bank has kept the overnight policy rate unchanged after 4 straight hikes last year by a cumulative 100 basis points to tame inflation and respond to tightening fiscal policy by the US Federal Reserve. It noted although Malaysia's economy grew by 8.7% last year, downside risks continue to stem mainly from global developments, including from weaker than expected growth outturns or much tighter and more volatile global financial conditions. This year, the country's economy should moderate amid a slower global economy, with growth to remain driven by domestic demand as household spending will be underpinned by sustained improvements in job and income prospects. Tourist arrivals are expected to continue rising, further lifting tourism-related activities, while the continued progress of multi-year infrastructure projects will support investment activity. Meanwhile, the implementation of projects from the recently retabled Budget 2023 is expected to provide upside risks to the domestic growth outlook. Minister Nik Nazmi Nik Ahmad, who holds the Natural Resources, Environment and Climate Change portfolio, says Putrajaya is reviewing the ban on the export of renewable energy. His ministry will also introduce a framework for third-party access to the national power grid in the third quarter of this year. Nik Nazmi was speaking to the press after launching the Malaysia Energy Transition Outlook report in Kuala Lumpur. He said if Malaysia does export renewable energy, it must sell at market rates or even above that due to the strong demand in the international market. This, he said, would give the country the resources to scale up on renewable energy, including to make technology cheaper and introduce new technologies like battery storage. It also presents an opportunity for Malaysia to be a possible centre of the ASEAN power grid. According to him, Singapore is using the Malaysian grid to access electricity supplied from Laos. He said the country can leverage the strong demand from its neighbours and create a financial framework to decarbonise. The prosecution has filed a notice of appeal over the Kuala Lumpur High Court's decision last Friday to acquit former Prime Minister Datuk Sri Najib Razak of abuse of power for tampering with an audit report on troubled 1MDB. A source from the Attorney General's chambers confirmed the filing of the notice of appeal when contacted by The Edge. On Friday, Court of Appeal Judge Muhammad Zaini Mazlan freed the former Pekan MP without his defence being called, as the court ruled that the prosecution had failed to prove a prima facie case against him. He also ordered that a certificate of indemnity be issued on former 1MDB President Arul Kandasamy, who was charged with abetting Najib. The prosecution is also appealing this certificate. Both appeals will now be heard at the Court of Appeal. Najib was charged with abuse of power as a public officer in his capacity as the then PM and Finance Minister in altering the 1MDB audit report prepared by the National Audit Department, which was to be tabled to the PAC to avoid any action against him. He is currently serving 12 years jail and faces a 210 million ringgit fine for misappropriating 42 million ringgit of SRC international funds. Pay TV service provider Astro Malaysia Holdings says its board has not received confirmation of any privatisation proposal. Its statement to Bursa came after its share price soared 22% yesterday, the largest single-day jump in terms of percentage, and again sparked speculation on a privatisation exercise. It said in the filing that following due inquiry, as far as it is aware, the company has not received confirmation of any such proposal. The broadcast giant was referring to the article in the Edge CEO Morning Brief dated today, titled Astro share price soars 22%, sparks speculation on privatisation. The share price rally lost steam today and the stock dropped 8.22% to 67 sen for a market value of 3.49 billion ringgit. It was the third most actively traded counter on Bursa Malaysia, with 64.8 million shares changing hands, compared with 72.04 million shares yesterday. Currently, Tycoon Ananda Krishnan controls a 41.29% stake, while Khazanah National holds 20.67%. The other substantial shareholders are Amanah National with 6.07% and the Employees Provident Fund with 4.98%.